The following compilation features unsettling and spine-chilling tales sourced from Reddit's horror communities. Reader discretion is strongly advised. These narratives may contain graphic descriptions, psychological distress, and themes that could unsettle sensitive individuals. Proceed with caution, as immersion into these eerie stories may provoke fear, unease, and sleep disturbances. Enter this realm of Reddit's creepy horror stories at your own risk, as the line between reality and the macabre may blur within these chilling narratives. We're partway through summer, and they haven't returned in a month and a half. They won't answer their texts, and location services are off. Since middle school, we three have been inseparable, and I can't shake this nagging feeling that something terrible has happened. Mike's parents spoke to the police, but his mom was in hysterics and attacked a police officer. According to his father, they haven't been able to find anything. My other friend's parents are out of the country and can't be contacted until they return to the States. It feels like no one is helping, and I have no choice but to try to track them down myself. Grim left his laptop at home, and I have some hacking experience. I broke into the laptop and found a file linked from his phone to the iCloud. It's encrypted for some reason. He was a paranoid fucker. I'm leaving his writings below. Maybe you can read through them and find something to help me with my search. I'm not a very good reader. CL. The tunnels. Across the world, every culture has stories that overlap. First-hand testimonies to the evil of the world that has been slowly drowned with time. Shadow people, Jinn, the Hat Man, and so many other names we've given to the dark and evil omens of the world. They knew something we had forgotten. We may have remnants of these testimonies, such as fear, somewhere in our minds. The primal, blood-curdling feeling of dread and terror, the nightmares and dreams we are plagued with. Maybe they all mean something more. I just finished my first year of college. The wonder and awe of the first year slowly dwindles in my eyes as reality sets in. 3 more years. The same mantra got me through high school, but now I have to pay for my classes. Finals week has come and passed, and all I feel is exhaustion, discouraged and unmotivated. I'm counting the days until the next move, until the showers. I never knew exactly why the story caught my attention, other than the fantastic writing and realistic imagery. There was something else about it, something familiar. Soon after, I must have read it hundreds of times. Something always drew me back to it. Nothing looked good to watch, nothing good to read, nothing good to eat. Just a charming little story of Hastings, Nebraska. It took over my every waking thought. The cult, the story. Could it be true? For anyone who doesn't know, let me catch you up to speed. In the early 80s, the world was very different, and that was especially true for rural America. We experienced the largest farming crisis since the Great Depression. God's ire was felt through barren fields and famine. Debts were high, and so was the dread in the air. With every underwhelming yield, the tidal wave of despair grew ever more ravenous. An estimated 300,000 family farmers defaulted on loans, and 250,000 went out of business. Amongst the once vibrant, blessed, and healthy fields walked a 34-year-old with a Bible and a joint. Michael Wayne Ryan was a truck driver with a wife and children, but throughout his life, he never found anything meaningful. Soon, he hurt himself and could no longer work, so he took to marijuana and spiritualism. Unfortunately, he found himself in the Christian identity movement, a belief steeped in anti-Semitism and racism. They prayed to Yahweh and kept kosher like his chosen people, and that's all they could talk about, how they were the chosen ones. Michael went as far as to say the spirit of the archangel Michael possessed him. In his mind, his righteous war against the serpent seed had just begun. They began prepping for the worst, burglarizing houses to support themselves, and amassing as many weapons as possible. James Thim, one of Ryan's old friends, invited him to stay on his pig farm, and this was the base of operations. Ryan's madness continued as he claimed to be king, and after taking multiple wives, doubts rose in the cult. 2 cult members were demoted to enslaved people, chained and shackled to the porch, and made to copulate with an innocent goat and sodomize each other as divine punishment. One of those members was Rick Stice, the father of 5-year-old Luke Stice, whose torture and suffering cannot and will not be forgotten. I pray for young Luke's soul. The only pure and innocent hope was snuffed unapologetically, and the mask of sanity removed. His paranoia overcame him as the father of Luke fled the compound. He escaped, which would only go on to fuel Michael's wrath. The other slave, James Thim, was accused of poisoning a turkey eaten at a communal meal. He was taken to the pig pens he used to use before becoming kosher, and here he would endure one of the worst deaths I've ever heard of. Ryan and 4 other members, including Ryan's own 16-year-old, were told to sodomize James with various tools, whip him 15 times each, 75 times, and shoot off his fingertips on his left hand. Ryan wanted the worst for himself, so he broke his arm and removed his pound of flesh with a razor blade and pliers. Then he had his son and another member break his legs before Ryan stomped in James's chest and ribs before finally granting him the grace of death. He commanded one of the members to shoot him in the head, and just like those before him, he was buried in an unmarked grave. Soon after they were caught stealing and arrested, Ryan was given the death sentence and believed himself to be in the grace of God till the very end. I sit behind my desk, the LED screen flickering off my eyelids as they drift open and close. The last of my candle slowly flickers out, turning into a trail of smoke. The lingering notes of the previous audio episode of my favorite story fading into the background as the abyss takes me. Have you ever been to Broken Bow, Nebraska? I find my mind drifting, slowly escaping me and traveling north. Cornfields, nothing but cornfields for miles and miles. No matter how far or how fast you travel, you can't escape the cornfields. Cottages and farms pass underneath as my consciousness is dragged along the highway. The actual size and scope of the Corn Belt can't be understated. Sometimes, when driving through America, there are moments when you are driving through nothing but corn for hours on end. You could drive for 10 hours in one direction and still see nothing but corn. It's hopeless, inescapable. In there, we're a drop of water in the ocean. In there, we are just another part of the food chain. Down a dirt road, my consciousness blew up dust. Across more corn, and then wheat, refurbished and freshly painted. A lone shack stood beside the road, an ominous omen compared to the waste around. I put my hands in my pockets and began to walk. To my left, an apple orchard, wide and long, with every glance. It became more and more inviting. The trees were littered with all the colors of apples you could imagine, from green to red to gold. It was beautiful and alien, a sore thumb in rural Nebraska. Red and pink apple blossoms waved in the breeze with temptation in the air. It smelled sweet. To my right, the simple and mundane wheat above the field. The gold noble stalks rose and fell in waves with the wind. I continued a mile down the road, and I started to feel cold. I could see the sun glinting off the golden fields, but couldn't feel the warmth. Clouds clutter the sky behind it, and all vegetation seems to diminish in the lifeless atmosphere of the silo. A clean, modernized shack lay next to it, almost an afterthought. The lights remain on inside, and a tiny raindrop hits me. It's stinging my face with the cold. As I began to feel the hopelessness wash over me, I felt my consciousness being retaken, up and up to the top of the silo. It was a faded red with a stainless steel cap, and the wheel lever turned clockwise. It opened slowly, creaking loudly. The smell hits me, an acidic, rotten, iron-pungent smell hits my nose and commands me to vomit. But I don't give in. I can see clearly, but the light that filters in reveals a pool of gore. Pieces of worm-like meat lay on the floor amongst thick, dark blood, with a light red film on top. Bones and teeth are scattered amongst the other unidentifiable body parts. I lean in. On the far end of the silo, away from the light filtering through the hatch, I could see something moving, a glinting metal contraption slowly grinding. Low rumbling noises can be heard through the silo, as well as an electrical humming, the kind that could drive you insane. piercing your ears. As the sound of the creaking hatch settles and my eyes start to adjust, my first impressions are over. An elongated pale arm connected to a massive bony body with pale white flesh drags something toward the metal contraption. Quiet sobs like those of a child can be heard, and as the creature lifts its bounty, it's a child, I think. Its face is malformed, and in between its lifeless pale blue beady eyes was a pig's nose. Its torso was separated from its waist, its guts and intestines dripping and swaying as it was being carried. Its lifeless eyes gazed out at the light offered by the hatch, almost mesmerized. I stare silently, unable to take my eyes off it, equally horrified, disgusted, and intrigued as to what would happen next. The lumbering pale creature lifts the child with one arm, dangling it over the contraption. Below him, the machine hummed. As my eyes adjust, I can see steel spinning cog-like wheels below him, hungry and eager. I stare at the child, unable to scream, unable to yell, just a tortured observer behind my own eyes. I will myself to look away with all my might, but my eyes set on the pitiful sight of the deformed child. Instead, something else happens. The gaze of the child shifts from the gore bathed in light to match mine. As I stare at him, he stares back, and a look of wrath and fear takes over his face as he begins to squeal and scream. The sound is unique and terrible. It still haunts me, a sound only a true abomination could make. The creature holding it looks up, its lightless black eyes reflecting my own. As it begins this guttural screech, neither broke eye contact. The baying of an injured dog echoes. It whines and screams, growing louder, mixing with the horrid screaming and squealing of the child. As the horrid cries continue, the other voices rise as if they echoed through a vent. The slow build-up of countless screams of children and the dreadful sound makes my ears bleed. I can feel my body go limp as I plummet forward into the gore below. The screaming grows louder and more desperate, and the smell grows even more foul. I wake up retching. The putrid vomit hits my throat and burns. I can't help it. I look around frantically. Something in my mind tells me I'm being watched. I stumble toward the bathroom and slip, smashing my head against the wall. I lay in my misery for a minute and slowly rose to my feet. Hastings. It began taking up more and more space in my mind as the weeks went on. Ever since the video, ever since the story, ever since I was 8 years old, I would wake up screaming and crying from night terrors. The room was cold and silent as my adolescent self sobbed out of fear. My ears were still ringing from the shotgun that had killed my parents. In my dream, of course, these nightmares became weekly, and I felt as if my mind had turned against me. Every culture worldwide has stories of the terrors of the night, the monsters hiding just behind the curtain of light, the monsters that lurk inside us, the truth of our violent and carnal nature. I have never trusted my dreams, nor believed they meant anything, but something about this morning isn't right. Last week, I finished my final exams for college, and summer has just begun. I moved away from my family home in California to be with my girlfriend, Maya. We just had our first anniversary, and ever since I moved, I've been doing well, not just in school, but also in making healthier habits and finding myself. Now, my desk was littered with food bags and empty drink containers. A sweet lavender scent from the candle I burned last night hung in the air. Ever since I started researching this story, it's been like this. I found a fragment of truth in the showers, and the Yahweh cult has haunted my thoughts and even more my nightmares. I have been telling my best friends, Michael and Maya, about it non-stop for 2 weeks, and they both have told me we should all go on a road trip there. My stomach feels like it's about to burst. I can't tell if it's my nerves or just because I haven't had anything but 2 cups of coffee and a Red Bull in the past 14 hours. My girlfriend sleeps peacefully beside me, and the loud snoring from the back is low and deep, like a slumbering giant. We started in Southern California, picked up Mike, and headed north. I stopped to sleep 6 or 8 hours after starting, but even then, I could only sleep an hour or 2. I could smell the corn, see the mesmerizing golden waves of wheat, feel the humid, sickly heat, and taste the blood. Since then, I haven't gotten a wink. I have to discover the falsity of my fear, and then maybe my thoughts will be my own again. Baby! Can we go to the bathroom? Maya crawls out from her slumber beside me, her face as adorable as ever. Of course. Love, there's an exit in half a mile. Be quick, I replied, slightly thankful for the opportunity to get another energy drink. We got off in between the major cities on some back road. There was an old gas station and a shack amongst the green farmland advertising raspberry smoothies. If you've been around farmland, you know that sometimes the producers set up a shack and sell goods directly from the producers. I parked at the gas station, and as Maya rushed out of the car door, I walked down to the storefront. They seemed overly lovely people. Maybe it's the charm of the Midwest. But they asked me about my day and where I was going, and I realize I don't have the specifics to any of the questions. The red brackish sludge in the paper cup smelt fantastic. It was smooth and creamy and had the right amount of sweetness. As I looked down into the cup, the red gloop sloshed, the chunky texture hugging the cup. Nausea creeps to the back of my throat. I ran into the side of the gas station, sprinting for the bathroom entrance, barely holding onto my stomach. I shoved past a man on his way out and threw up into the trash can in the next chamber. I could smell the stench of the truck stop bathroom, which didn't help the nausea. A headache as the nauseating stench makes me retch violently. All I could think of was the viscera-covered floor of the silo, the creature, the child's eyes. I shook the thought, my head throbbing with pain as the room spun. I looked in the mirror, and instead of puke running down my mouth, it was stained with blood. It drips down my neck, warm and putrid. I glance up. The nose of a pig. I blink it away, grab the paper towels, and wipe myself down. Tears gather, and I sob lightly. I don't want to keep going, I say to my girlfriend when I return to the car. Mike was passed out, and with me vomiting and having a headache, I just felt like turning around and heading home. My girlfriend had other plans to see this through for us. For me, she took over driving for the next length of the journey, and I passed out in the passenger seat soon after. Wake up, baby, her sweet voice called to me from the blackness of my unconscious, like the graces of God washed upon me. Her warmth and the sweet smell of vanilla and cinnamon hit me when she embraced me. I don't deserve her. I'm up. Darling, did we make it to the hotel? Yes. Baby, let's get going before it starts raining. I opened my eyes as she let go of our embrace. The horizon line was empty and flat in all directions, and the underlying beauty of the sunset peeking out from a cascade of clouds filled my eyes. A storm was coming. There is beauty in the dangers of life, the ocean, space, and caves. The less we know and the more infinite something is, the more beautiful it becomes. This sunset was no exception. The light was fading fast, hiding behind the earth, and I could feel the biting cold of the drizzling rain above. Utah. Maya heads to sleep while Mike and I are wide awake. I saw him unpacking his clothes and taking out his gardening bag. Are you going for a smoke? I shot him a knowing glance while grinning. Yeah, you comin'. He held up his bounty. A small hand-rolled joint, pure white. Of course. We made our way to the lobby to look around. We stepped through the lobby. It was dead quiet, with no one around. We stepped out under an overhang for cars to unload luggage and lit up. Mike took a long drag and blew a cloud of white smoke before looking my way with a raised eyebrow. So, first day in, how are you holding up? Mr. Dreamer. He looked at me, amused with himself. Well, I'm alive, aren't I? I chuckled and held out my hand for him to pass it. He reached over. No, thanks to that raspberry smoothie. What was there rabbit piss in it? He jeered at me. He was met with a swift retort of smoke in his face. Yeah, except you would have begged me for a taste if that was the case. You freak. I chuckled, coughing. It would remind you of that one ex. I teased him before passing. You're one to talk. You kiss the ground Maya walks on. Well, at least she doesn't make me drink the special juice. I gave him a side eye before slapping his shoulder. Cheer up. It's not that bad. She could always have pegged you. Oh, that's gross. Dude, it wasn't like that anyway. Tinder has been pretty dry, though. Don't worry. Bro, you'll find a match. The closer to Arkansas, the higher your chances. I laughed. And he did, too, as the embers fell to the wet pavement. The sounds of the rainstorm enveloped everything around us, and rest came to us in the late hours of the night. I can hear the AC running. An obnoxious low hum fills the room as the radiator leaks cold air with a hiss. I can't feel Maya next to me. She must be in the bathroom or something. I slowly open my eyes, groggy and exhausted. The blank, plain ceiling was only disrupted by the shadow of the spinning fan. It is ominous, spinning and spinning, uncaring and unfeeling. I could feel a skittering up my thigh, slowly making its way under the covers and up my arm. I can't move. I could feel my heart beating faster and faster. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't let me. I want to scream. I want to take this thing off of me and kill it. But my body won't let me. My neck muscles won't listen, and my mouth isn't there. The bug continued uncaring, crawling up my arm and shoulder, approaching my neck, and crawling on the sensitive skin. I want to throw up. It crawls toward my ear, and I feel 3 more skitters across my body, my left leg, right foot, and right hand. The one near my face continued up toward my ear, not stopping. I could feel them all, the horrible legs, their vile forms defiling me in my conscious prison. I'm going to be sick. More and more began crawling up me. 4, 12, no 30. More. They begin encasing me, and cockroaches run across me head to toe, biting at my flesh with millions of sharp pinches in broken harmony. The one burrows deeper into my ear, deeper and deeper. It was the single most painful thing I had ever had to endure. I could feel the wall of my ear being chewed away, the legion swarming my body and consuming me. It made its way to where it was warmest, most wet, my brain. I woke up gasping for air. "Baby!" Maya called up to me as sweet as a kitten, cold sweat dripping down my back and face. Yeah, I'm right here. Love, it's okay. I sighed exhaustedly, my heart racing and my head aching worse than ever before. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. I got up and lumbered through the foreign darkness to the bathroom door. I stepped in, closed the door, and turned on the light. What the actual fuck? My eyes had dark circles more pronounced than yesterday, and I looked paler than usual. Those drugs can't have been good for me. I splashed my face with cold water and let it drip down my chest as I Saturday on the toilet, trying to collect my thoughts and calm down. Another 8-hour drive today. I was still groggy from my jarring morning, but I still pressed on. The road disappeared beneath me, time losing meaning as it does in the usual road trip fashion. We were going from Salt Lake to Denver. The early morning air was thick with fog. We planned on getting there a little early, so we could enjoy the city a little. Then it was just one more day till we arrived at our destination. The nervousness was thick in my stomach, and I was equally horrified and ecstatic to get this over with finally. The conspiracies and theories have consumed me for the past few months. I just couldn't understand why nobody was talking about it. I had gone over the history of Broken Bow repeatedly, rereading the stories until the words lost all meaning. It was ingrained in me now. Every letter of every report, every little detail swept under the rug. No one cared. At least that's what it seemed like if the depravity and demonic nature of the place was really true. It has to burn. Road signs flew past us. It's a straight shot to Denver. The same highway for 8 hours can get boring, so my mind drifted. Thunk. What the fuck was that? My girlfriend rose from her previously peaceful sleep like she was awake the whole time. I don't know. Hold on. I pulled to the side of the road, slowing down quickly as she jumped out to see what it was. Her shoes hit the ground, and I heard a high-pitched gasp. Babby. It was a bunny. I could hear the tears in her voice. She was always so empathetic. That's one thing I love about her. She loves all life. So much so that she wants to be an environmental science major. I walked the perimeter of the car, seeing the blood on my wheel and the mess in the road. I'm sorry. Love. It came out of nowhere. We should keep going, though, to make good time. She gasped again in defiance. No, we have to bury it. Why are you in such a rush? You haven't stopped to go shopping with me or scenic stops. The least you can do is help this bunny you killed for the sake of making good time. I took a deep breath, heavily laced with aggravation, and walked to the trunk. There were piles of bags and suitcases for the trip. Under it was an old metal baseball bat and a shovel. I scraped the reminisce off the side of the road as best I could. The smell wasn't great, and flies were already starting to gather. I dug a shallow hole and flattened the mound of dirt. Maya stuck a nearby pretty rock and some wildflowers she took quite a while to find while I was scraping. She closed her eyes for a moment, losing herself in her mind, wishing the animal well. She opened her eyes, and I held her gently. I'm sorry. Baby, I love you. I'll be more careful. I promise. She nodded. Maybe it was the sluggishness of the hangover, or perhaps the guilt from hitting the rabbit. But as nausea climbs up my throat, I quickly pulled away from her and puked. Oh my God. Baby. I lurched over, and I could feel another presence. Something malevolent. Something basking in my suffering. Out of the corner of my eye, I could swear I saw a man, inches away from my face, smiling at me, unmoving but breathing hard. Such a gleeful smile, like a little kid, watching closely as I emptied my stomach, both sick and terrified. I'm okay. I just am a bit nauseous. I practically crawled back in the car, the comfort of sitting the only thing to calm my stomach, and Maya gave me some water. The rest of the trip was mundane. Mike lit a cigarette. He opened the window, and the sweet tobacco wafted through the air. It was so beautiful out here. The mountains, the grass, and even the sun felt different, warmer, more welcoming. After you sleep on a couch in Las Vegas for 6 months, everything just seems a little brighter. A gentle, rhythmic buzz comes from that back seat, and Michael groans as he takes his phone out of his pocket. Hi, Mom. Yeah, everything's good. It'll take just a few more hours till we're there. Yeah. Love you too. He quickly hung up and took a drag of his cigarette. Well, that fills today's quota. His mom has been calling 3 times a day since we left, but she's always been a little off the rocker when it comes to him. My parents live in Southern California. Life was excellent there, and my high school experience was nothing special. I was raised Jewish. My father and his parents were, so naturally, I would be at the temple every Sunday, up until my bar mitzvah. That is, it was fun, but nothing special. I was too young to glean wisdom in tradition and history. I came to appreciate it later after reading about other religions and history later in my life. My beliefs as a kid comforted me when it felt like there was nothing else. I never quite got along with my mom. My brothers and father were fine, but she was always the one I clashed heads with for various reasons. Mike was the only reason I was able to get by as a kid. I hated home, and his place was my second one. After that, Maya brought me meaning. I hated people and most of the things in life until I learned how to love the beauty and futility of our struggle as people, always trying to be better and do better. Maya always tries her hardest whenever she chooses something. She puts her heart and soul into it, and when she fails, it hurts and is hard, but if she loves it, she always perseveres. She's constantly learning new things and skills, spending time outside, and listening to music. She loves life and the world. I admire that. I never had the same passion for life. I don't like people, and I have anxiety, but I love to create and care for the things around me. That must be what she sees in me. I'm so thankful for her. I'd do anything for her. I'm grateful for Mike, too. He's always there when I'm in need, at least when his mother lets him. I'm glad they're with me. Sunset slowly crept up, a grand show of colorful colors on the horizon. We made several bathroom and food stops, but finally, here we are. While we were coming into town, there was a sleepy ghost town vibe. It's a tiny town, the kind where they knew if you weren't from around there. There were a lot of eyes, and people kept staring at us. The town was likely a popular truck stop. Gas stations and food establishments crowded the main street, but the people were warmer than I expected. Some kept their heads down while others stared. Maybe it was the California plates or the sunburst orange car. I wouldn't say I liked it. Maya found a cute restaurant to get some food in before we went to the hotel, and we found parking on a side street. It was called the Bonfire, and it had a wooden sign with a bit of a bonfire design. It had a small town charm that little holes in the walls often had. It was a local place, and a lovely old lady sat by us and handed out the menus. There were 7 items, and all of them came with fries. Maya got a burger, Mike got the strip steak, and I got a garden salad. Food came quickly, and the water was with them. The waitress put them down and said, "If y'all need anything else, I'll be right over there." "Okay." She pointed to an empty booth across the floor. We said yes and thanked her. We finished quickly, and I put down $40, thanked the waitress, and headed out the door. We are staying in the Copstone Hotel, which is adorable and comfortable. The fireplace in the lobby is lit and warm, like a beacon in the cold, damp summer air. We could feel the humidity shifting, but haven't thought about it as much as we do now. The air was thick and sticky. Sweat was beading off of us. The decor was homey, wooden chairs, leather couches, and all ranch-style furniture. The lady behind the front desk was in her late 20s, and she spoke as I approached her. "Hello, sir. What is the name for the check-in?" "Grim." "Ah, here you are. Your room number is 23. Enjoy your stay." She smiled, and I took the key. "Thank you. Come on, baby." She was half unconscious as she held my arm. Food always makes her tired. I laid Maya to bed and went to the bathroom with my laptop to start reading the local news. The screen glows in the dim bathroom. The only light was an old, warm-toned light bulb that buzzed gently. Local Walmart shot up in robbery. Bed and breakfast 60th anniversary. "You're going to die here." As I scroll past, my vision goes blurry. A familiar headache creeps in. I close my eyes and recoil as pain shoots through my head. "Jesus Christ," I mumble as I refocus on the screen. Runaway cattle topple cars. I close the tab and open YouTube. "We've been waiting for you. Piggy." I heard a cold whisper low and gravely, like a beast speaking our language. Its breath is freezing on my neck, and I swear I feel its nose touching me. I screamed. I jumped and bumped my head on the towel rack above the toilet, my laptop clattering to the ground as the lights went out. "Baby." I could hear my girlfriend calling, but something was off. The light from the laptop showed up and onto the mirror from the floor. "Baby." The high pitches of her voice broke, and I could hear an unnatural resonation. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It was as if it were in my head. "Baby." Her voice broke as the entity's growls broke through under its mockery of her. It got closer and louder. I looked at the shower curtain lit up from the light in the mirror, and a bloody pig's head sat above the curtains, mouth agape. I woke up on the toilet, laptop on my lap, and my neck aching. "Babby, I have to pee." "One sec." "Lovely." I quickly stand up, get myself sorted, and leave. "You were in there forever." She looked irritated and grumpy, as she always was after she woke up. I rubbed the back of my head. It ached. "Sorry." "Baby." I fell asleep. My neck hurt, and I kissed her on the forehead on my way out. I went and laid down on the bed and was out soon after. The bottomless abyss welcomed me once again to the infinite darkness. Sleep. The dull cool of the inky black around me. I turned around, and a deer was chewing something on the ground 50 feet away from me. "Hello," I say. It stared into my eyes expectantly. "Hello," I say louder. It paced back and forth, its elegant tan form bright against the inky darkness. I focused in my mind on my response, forming my lips carefully. "Hello, how are you?" I say, and it stops, and its gaze locks with mine. "Oh, I am wonderful. It has been so long since I've had visitors. How are you, child?" It slowly stands up and morphs into a form comparable to a human form. although the head of a deer remains. The arms, legs, and body contort. I'm good. It's been a few days on the road, so my rest is welcome. I respond. I try to bend my mind around, turning the inky blackness into a warm field. The figure Saturday in a leather seat across from me. This is a nice place. My child, tell me, what do you want by coming here? He drank from a gold goblet, his pupils black, the stag jaws taking in greedy gulps. I need to see it. I need to know that it's not real. I need the dreams to stop. I need true sleep. My true feelings flowed out of my mouth without me thinking. I wanted out, but something was holding me in place. Good, good, my child. You will see soon. Have patience. The invitation must be accepted. He put the goblet down and stared at me with empty animal eyes. Can we come in? His stag face grew into a cartoon smile. His lips peel against his face. It is synthetic, like a wax figure pulled with a string, forced into an antagonizing grin. Fear fills me, pouring into my stomach and creating a heavy pit in my stomach. I want out. I force my gaze downward, and a field appears below me. The distant sun is showering golden light so bright that it makes the cornfields glow. As I stared into the light, my surroundings dulled, my dream blurred, and a ladder was extended from the light. I put my hand on it. Maya's face stared back at me, her eyes unopened, and my body was uncomfortably sweaty. I Saturday up, trying to control my breathing. I'm so tired of these dreams. My doctor said the pills would help, but they make me feel fuzzy and blurry. It doesn't stop the visions, the painfully sleepless nights. My mind just won't quit. I got up and made my way to the bathroom. I shampooed and cleaned, exited the bathroom, and heard Maya's sleepy voice. Baby, Maya's sleepy voice greets me. Good morning. It's time to get up. The free breakfast ends at 9, I said, and she practically squealed with excitement and started to get ready. I'll meet you downstairs. Baby, I'm going to get Mike. Okay. I headed across the hall and knocked 3 times. The door squeaked open to a dressed but disheveled Michael. Hello there. I greeted him. Good morning, sir. Would you like to go for a dubious smoke? He is entertained. The best mood Michael could be in. Of course. Lead the way. He walked out of his room, and we quickly marched to the car and lit up. I haven't been able to sleep for shit. Bro, I'm so tired. I say admittedly. Bet you're glad we're not doing a huge drive today. Though, fair. I hope it is all going to be over soon. I took a long drag and passed it to him. What are you talking about? He grabbed it from me. I've been having vivid dreams again, and debunking this should help, I think. I hope. I opened the door and started back inside, since Maya would be there soon. We met in the lobby. I saw her eating waffles with a plate piled high. She made me smile just by being with her. Mike came and got his food. Sausage and eggs. I got coffee and began planning the day's journey. I Saturday down with my laptop and started researching, checking every resource I had to find the pig farm's address. I only saw a little, but it was a road name, Obsidian Drive. I found it on Google Maps and closed the laptop. Mike finished his food, and Maya was halfway to a food coma, leaving a 1/4 of the original waffle size. All right, let's go. I got up and threw away my empty coffee cup. Mike and Maya followed after me, and I made my way to the car. I got in and set up my maps. It's just a matter of time now. My brain ached from last night, but I didn't care. I needed to be free of this burden. The drive started with the repetitive miles upon miles of cornfield. We turned down Alabaster Drive, the road never ending. We had been driving on this road for about 4 hours now, but no sign of significance. Baby, I think we've seen this already. Are we driving in a circle? Maya groaned. Exhausted and a little annoyed, I looked out the window and there was a little red shack. Though, that did look somewhat familiar. I don't think so. Love, everything just looks the same out here. I chimed back. All this corn and still world hunger. That's crazy, Mikkel says as he emptily gazes out the window. I laughed and shook my head. We can't even feed corn to hungry people. We don't digest it fully. Maya looked over with a thinking face. Well, that's ironic. I smiled to myself as I responded. It's American. We pick the most unhealthy fruit we possibly can and make it an industry. Vitamins, nutrients, minerals, and we choose to consume corn syrup. Truly, it's gross. I thought about all the different candies, sodas, and other confections we make with corn syrup. Mike took a hit of his vape. Only here could we grow diabetes. I laughed, and my attention shifted. I could feel the world slow down around me. An elk stood in the middle of the road, inevitable and built like a house. I slammed on my brakes and swerved to the right, nearly sending us into the cornfield, but stopping just short as my panicked breathing started up. Maya and Mike shrieked as we stopped just short. What the fuck, babe? Maya socked me in the shoulder with a dull thud. Ow, damn it. There was something in the road. I looked back, expecting to see the elk, but all I saw was the calm breeze blowing the corn to and fro. I didn't see anything. Be more careful next time. She looked at me with confusion mixed with anger. Sorry, baby. We're almost there. Promise. I started driving again, getting back on the road. The sun was hot, beating down on us a little after midday. The more I went, the more the road narrowed somewhat. Maya fell asleep, and there were no other cars on the road, so I wasn't worried. It was about 4 p.m., and the road just kept getting more narrow. The corn hugging the sides of the road groped the car as we drove in, the leaves encasing us as we went deeper. Jesus, dude, this road is fucked, Mike said, observing the landscape as I swerved potholes. If you weren't careful, you could easily drift into the corn. I saw golden wheat fields, to either the left or right. Beautiful, waving golden wheat. And just from a mile down the road, I could see a house with a silo. It looked different. No orchard from my dream. Just a green silo and a red pristine house. I didn't recognize it, but it felt so similar. I had to see inside. I drove off the side of the road near it, turning off my lights and putting it in neutral as I approached, trying to be quiet just in case. Maya was still asleep, and I was unwilling to endure the wrath of waking her after such a long ride. Mike and I went ahead. He lit a joint as we walked up. Why the fuck are we here again? He raised his eyebrow in my direction. I chuckled. Just wait, bro. I heard there were local country girls in your area right behind that door. I pointed at the newly painted green door. Seriously though, according to legend, these pristine barn houses are set up all around with no real explanation. All unlocked and modern, completely vacant. So, no girls then. Damn, that's fucking creepy. Though, I wonder what they're used for. He took a long inhale before putting it out on the golden knocker of the front door. The barn house was freshly painted red, and the porch was empty. The underside of the roof was green, and it hung over the porch slightly. We could see a window on the house and looked in at blank walls and well-lit rooms. There was no sign of life, but the inside looked clean and cold. Looks empty. Mike, what's the move? I thought this was your plan. Genius. Probably this. He opened the door with no caution, cockily smiling as he did so. Empty, just like you said. He went in, and I followed. It was strange. It was an ideally kept house with no furniture, no art, and no signs of life at all. It was all dull white grey, except for a green door with a golden knocker and a gold door handle, just like the front door. It was all freshly painted and smelled stale and stagnant, even though there was an unnaturally cold draft coming from within. Mike got goosebumps all up and down his right arm, and I shivered as we went in. It must have been below 40 degrees. I talked to Mike in a low whisper. Strange. It's empty but seems new. Yeah, but just one door is creepy. Put on a couch or something. I looked around more. There was just a big living room and one door. No stairs, even though the house looked taller, with no bathroom and no kitchen. God, I'm stressed. Michael says. I nod, slowly turning the knob. My stomach is rolling and folding in on itself at the implications of this. It started about a month ago. I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty as hell. As I stumbled to the kitchen for a glass of water, I noticed a sliver of light coming from Ethan's room. The door was cracked open, and I could see his small silhouette framed against the window. "Ethan," I called softly, pushing the door open. "What are you doing up, buddy?" He didn't turn around. He just stood there, staring out into the darkness. "Ethan," I tried again, a little louder this time. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Daddy, it's time," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. A shiver ran down my spine. Time for what, Bud? But he didn't answer. Instead, he climbed back into bed and pulled the covers up to his chin. Within seconds, he was fast asleep. I checked my phone. 2:12 a.m. Weird. But kids do strange things sometimes. Right. I tucked Ethan in and went back to bed, chalking it up to a random night terror or sleepwalking episode. The next night, I woke up again around 2 a.m. Call it parental instinct or just paranoia, but something made me check on Ethan. Sure enough, there he was at the window again. I checked my phone, 2:12 a.m. on the dot. This time, I didn't say anything. I just watched him from the doorway. He stood there, perfectly still, for exactly 5 minutes. Then, just as I was about to intervene, a sound pierced the silence that made my skin crawl. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps on our front door. Ethan didn't react. He just climbed back into bed like nothing had happened. With my heart pounding in my chest, I crept downstairs and peered through the peephole. The porch light illuminated an empty stoop. No one was there. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence, maybe some drunk teenager playing a prank, but a nagging feeling in my gut told me something wasn't right. For the next week, the same thing happened every single night. Ethan at the window at 2:12 a.m., knocking at 2:17 a.m., no one at the door. I tried talking to Ethan about it during the day, but he had no memory of getting up at night. He just looked at me with those big, innocent eyes and asked if we could have pancakes for breakfast. I was starting to lose it. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't focus at work. Every night, I'd sit on the stairs, watching Ethan's door, waiting for 2:12 a.m. with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. One night, about 10 days in, I decided to do something different. At 2:10 a.m., I quietly entered Ethan's room and stood next to his bed. As the clock ticked over to 2:12, his eyes snapped open. He Saturday up, but when he saw me, he frowned. "Daddy," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here." "Why not, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Because," he said, his eyes darting to the window, "she's waiting." My mouth went dry. "Who's waiting?" "Ethan." But before he could answer, the knocking started. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from the other side of Ethan's bedroom window. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the eerie silence that followed, I could hear my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Get away from the window. Now." But my son didn't move. His eyes were fixed on something outside, something I couldn't see. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his small hand and pressed it against the glass. That's when I saw it. A hand on the other side of the window, mirroring Ethan's. Long, skeletal fingers with blackened nails. The skin was pale and waxy, like that of a corpse left too long in water. "Jesus Christ," I yelled, lunging forward to grab Ethan. But as soon as my fingers touched his shoulder, he let out an ear-piercing scream that made me stagger backward. The hand outside the window vanished, and Ethan collapsed onto the floor, his body convulsing violently. I scooped him up, my mind reeling with panic. As I turned to rush him out of the room, my eyes caught something that made me freeze in my tracks. There, Scratched into the window glass were 5 words I ming for him. John. A wave of dread washed over me. How the hell did it know my name? I ran downstairs with Ethan in my arms, fumbling for my phone to call 911, but as soon as I hit the bottom step, every light in the house flickered and died. In the pitch darkness, I heard something that sent chills down my spine. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound of nails dragging across wood, coming from every direction at once. "Daddy," Ethan whimpered, his small body trembling against mine. "She's inside now." I sprinted for the front door, my free hand outstretched in the darkness, but when I grabbed the doorknob, it was ice cold and slick with something wet. I yanked my hand back, feeling warm liquid dripping down my wrist. The coppery smell of blood filled my nostrils. "You can't leave, John," a voice whispered, so close I could feel fetid breath on my neck. It sounded like Marie, but wrong, like her voice was being forced through a throat full of gravel. "We're a family again." "You're not Marie," I choked out, backing away. "My wife is dead." A chilling laugh echoed through the house. "Dead? Oh, John, I'm so much more than dead." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. I blinked, momentarily blinded. When my vision cleared, I saw her. Marie stood at the foot of the stairs, but it wasn't the Marie I remembered. Her skin was grey and bloated, her eyes sunken and filled with a sickly yellow light. Her once beautiful hair hung in wet, rotting clumps around her face. She wore the same dress we buried her in, now stained with dirt and God knows what else. "Marie," I breathed, unable to believe what I was seeing. Her mouth stretched into an impossibly wide grin, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "I've come to take our son home. John, it's time for Ethan to join me." Ethan squirmed in my arms, reaching out towards the thing that looked like his mother. "Mommy," he called, his voice a mixture of fear and longing. The creature's eyes locked onto Ethan, and she took a step forward. The floorboards creaked and squelched under her bare, mud-caked feet. "No," I shouted, clutching Ethan tighter. "You're not taking him." I turned and ran for the kitchen, my mind racing. Salt. I needed salt. Wasn't that supposed to work against spirits or something? As I fumbled through the cabinets, I could hear Marie's wet footsteps getting closer. The air grew cold, and the putrid stench of decay filled the room. "Oh, John," her voice sing-songed from just outside the kitchen. "You can't protect him forever. Ethan belongs with me now." I finally found the salt and turned around, ready to throw it, but what I saw made the container slip from my numb fingers. Marie stood in the doorway, but her body was wrong. Her limbs were elongated, joints bent at impossible angles. Her head lolled to one side, neck stretched and distorted, and behind her, writhing in the shadows, were dozens of arms, reaching, grasping. Ethan screamed. In that moment, as I stared into the abyss of that horrifying scene, I knew our lives would never be the same. Whatever was wearing Marie's face, whatever had been coming for my son night after night, it wasn't going to stop, and I had no idea how to fight it. The thing that wasn't Marie lurched forward, its grotesque limbs scrabbling across the kitchen floor. I backed away, clutching Ethan to my chest, my mind blank with terror. My back hit the kitchen counter, and I realized we were trapped. "Please," I begged, though I knew reasoning with this creature was futile. "Please, just leave us alone." The thing cocked its head at an unnatural angle, Marie's once beautiful features twisting into a mockery of confusion. "Leave you alone? But John, we're family, and family should be together, forever." One of its many arms shot out, impossibly fast. Grabbing my ankle, I yelped as icy fingers dug into my flesh, the chill spreading up my leg like poison. Ethan whimpered in my arms, his small body shaking uncontrollably. In that moment of pure desperation, something inside me snapped. A surge of protective rage coursed through my veins, burning away the paralyzing fear. I wouldn't let this thing take my son. I couldn't. With a roar, I kicked out at the creature's face. My foot connected with a sickening squelch, and it reeled back. Momentarily stunned, I seized the opportunity, charging past it towards the basement door. If we couldn't leave the house, maybe we could find a way to trap it. I slammed the basement door behind us and fumbled for the light switch. The dim bulb flickered to life, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. Ethan clung to me, his face buried in my shoulder. "Daddy," he whispered, "I'm scared." "I know, buddy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But we're gonna be okay, I promise." That's when I saw it. In the corner of the basement, partially hidden behind some old boxes, was a door I'd never noticed before. It looked ancient, its wood warped and stained with age. From upstairs came the sounds of splintering wood and shattering glass. The creature was tearing the house apart looking for us. With no other choice, I approached the mysterious door. As I reached for the handle, Ethan suddenly spoke up. "That's where Mommy comes from," he said matter-of-factly. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Ethan." He pointed at the door. "Every night at 2:12, that door opens. Mommy comes out and goes to my window. She says she misses us and wants us to come with her. But I was scared, so I didn't open the window." My mind reeled. How long had this been going on? And why 2:12 a.m.? Then it hit me. 2:12 a.m., February 12th, the day Marie died. Before I could process this revelation, the basement door exploded inward. The creature that wore Marie's face came slithering down the stairs, its body contorting in ways that defied physics. "Found you," it hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers. I grabbed the handle of the mysterious door and yanked it open. Beyond it was not the foundation of our house, but a swirling vortex of shadows and mist. The air that rushed out was frigid and smelled of decay. The creature let out an inhuman shriek. "No, you can't send me back. I won't go alone." It lunged at us, its numerous arms outstretched. In that split second, I made a decision that would haunt me forever. I set Ethan down and kissed his forehead. "I love you, buddy. Always remember that." Then, using all my strength, I shoved the creature towards the open door, but as it teetered on the threshold, one of its arms wrapped around my waist. I looked at Ethan, saw the terror and confusion in his eyes. "Run, Ethan. Run upstairs and don't look back." The last thing I saw was my son's tear-streaked face as the creature and I fell through the doorway into the abyss beyond. I don't know how long I fell. Time seemed to have no meaning in that place of shadows and whispers. But eventually, I crashed onto what felt like solid ground. I opened my eyes to find myself back in my own basement. The old door had vanished, leaving only a blank wall. Sunlight streamed through the small windows. Morning had come. Painfully, I climbed the stairs, calling out for Ethan. I found him curled up on the living room couch, sleeping peacefully. When I woke him, he had no memory of the night's events. It's been a week since that terrible night. The scratches on Ethan's window are gone, as if they never existed. He no longer gets up at 2:12 a.m. To all appearances, our lives have returned to normal. But I know better. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers coming from the basement, and in my dreams, I see Marie, the real Marie, reaching out to me from beyond a door I can never open. I don't know if the creature will find another way back. I don't know if it's truly gone, or if it's just biding its time. All I know is that every night, I check on Ethan at 2:12 a.m., and every night, I pray that the knocking doesn't start again. The invitation came as a surprise. Arlo, my friend since freshman year, had always been the life of the party. With his chiseled good looks, charismatic personality, and bottomless trust fund, he was the quintessential frat boy. But behind the boisterous laughter and endless stream of social events, Arlo had a softer side that only a few got to see. I was one of those few. He called me up one Friday evening. "Hey, want to go on a boat trip? My dad's yacht. Just a small group. Thought we could use a break." I hesitated. I liked my quiet weekends, reading or tinkering with my photography. But the thought of being cooped up in my apartment for another weekend didn't appeal either. Plus, Arlo could be convincing. Sure, sounds like fun. I finally agreed. Our group was an eclectic mix. There was Marissa, sweet and kind-hearted, always ready to lend a hand or a shoulder to cry on. Her boyfriend, Alan, was the protective type, always making sure everyone was safe and having a good time. Bradley, who had recently dropped out of college, was trying to find his footing. He had a restless energy about him, as if he was constantly searching for something just out of reach. We set off on a crisp Saturday morning. The sky was a perfect blue, the kind that makes you believe nothing bad could ever happen. Arlo's dad's yacht was impressive, all gleaming wood and polished metal. We loaded up supplies, laughed, and settled in for what we thought would be a relaxing weekend. The first day was perfect. We swam, sunbathed, and ate way too much junk food. Arlo and Alan took turns showing off their diving skills, while Marissa and I laughed at their antics. Bradley was quieter than usual, staring out at the horizon, lost in his thoughts. As evening approached, the sky began to change. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, an ominous sign. Arlo dismissed our concerns with a wave of his hand. It's just a little storm. We'll be fine. The storm hit harder than any of us expected. One moment, the sea was calm. The next, we were being tossed around like a toy in a bathtub. Lightning flashed, illuminating the terror on our faces, and the rain came down in sheets, blinding us. "Get below deck," Arlo shouted over the wind. "We need to ride this out." We scrambled below, the yacht rocking violently. Water leaked in from somewhere, pooling at our feet. Arlo and Alan fought to keep the boat steady, but it was a losing battle. The storm was relentless. In the chaos, I noticed something strange. Amidst the howling wind and crashing waves, there were whispers, faint, almost inaudible. But there, I looked around, but no one else seemed to notice. I shook it off, blaming it on the stress and noise. When the storm finally passed, the relief was palpable. We emerged, soaked and shaken but alive. The yacht had taken a beating, but it was still afloat. We spent the next few hours assessing the damage and making repairs. It wasn't until later that we realized Bradley was missing. "Bradley," Marissa called out, her voice tinged with panic. "Where are you?" We searched the yacht from top to bottom, but there was no sign of him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The last anyone had seen of him was just before we went below deck. Alan had been helping him secure some loose gear. "He was right there," Alan said, his face pale. I turned around for just a second, and he was gone. We tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had fallen overboard, though none of us could remember hearing a splash. Maybe he had been swept away by the waves. But deep down, we knew something else was at play. That night, as we tried to sleep, the whispers returned, louder this time, insistent. I lay in my bunk, heart pounding, listening. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the small cabin with their eerie presence. "Do you hear that?" I whispered to Arlo, who was in the bunk across from mine. He nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "What the hell is that?" We woke the others, but Marissa and Alan insisted it was just the wind. They were trying to be logical, to stay calm, but the fear in their eyes betrayed them. The next morning, things took a turn for the worse. Marissa was gone. We found her bunk empty, her belongings untouched. Alan was frantic, searching the yacht and calling her name until his voice was hoarse. But she was gone, just like Bradley. Alan was inconsolable. He spent hours staring out at the sea, whispering Marissa's name. Arlo and I tried to keep it together, but the tension was unbearable. We were stranded, with no way to call for help, and whatever was out there was picking us off one by one. As night fell, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. This time, there was no denying it. We all heard them, a chorus of voices, angry and mournful. "We need to get out of here," Arlo said, his face grim. "Whatever is out there, it's coming for us." But there was nowhere to go. We were trapped on the yacht, surrounded by endless ocean. The next morning, Alan was gone. His disappearance was the most disturbing of all. There were signs of a struggle, scratches on the walls, a trail of blood leading to the edge of the deck. It was clear he hadn't gone quietly. Arlo and I were the only ones left. The whispers had grown louder, more insistent. They seemed to follow us. No matter where we went on the yacht, sleep was impossible. We took turns keeping watch, though it felt futile. On the last night, the whispers reached a crescendo. They were no longer just background noise. They were inside our heads, echoing through our minds. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and when I turned, there was no one there. "Arlo," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to do something. We can't just sit here and wait to die." He nodded, his eyes haunted. "I know, but what can we do?" That night, we heard footsteps on the deck above. Slow, deliberate. They circled the yacht, stopping occasionally. We huddled together in the cabin, clutching makeshift weapons. Arlo with a broken oar, and me with a kitchen knife. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs. The door to the cabin creaked open, and a figure stood in the doorway. It was Bradley, or what was left of him. His eyes were hollow, his skin pale and wet, as if he had been dragged from the depths of the ocean. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice a hollow echo. Behind him, Marissa and Alan appeared, their faces twisted with anger and pain. "You should have stayed away," they whispered in unison. Arlo and I backed away, our hearts pounding. The ghosts of our friends advanced, their expressions filled with a mix of sorrow and rage. "We're sorry," I said, my voice barely audible. "We didn't mean for this to happen." Bradley stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Arlo. "You brought us here. You should have known." Arlo's face crumpled, guilt and fear warring within him. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know." The ghosts moved closer, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath in the dim light. "There's no escape," Marissa said, her voice like a knife cutting through the silence. "You're part of this now." Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Arlo's father, his face etched with sorrow and determination. "Father?" Arlo gasped, his voice filled with disbelief. Arlo's father stepped forward, his gaze locking onto his son. "I should have told you," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "This yacht, it's cursed. I thought I could keep it a secret, that I could protect you, but I was wrong." The ghosts turned their attention to Arlo's father, their whispers growing louder, more accusatory. "You brought us here," they chanted. "You brought us here." Arlo's father took a deep breath, his eyes filled with pain. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." He stepped forward, placing himself between us and the ghosts. "Take me," he said, his voice resolute. "Leave them alone." The ghosts hesitated, their forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. Then, with a final, mournful whisper, they disappeared, leaving the cabin silent once more. Arlo's father turned to us, his face pale and drawn. "Go," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Get out of here. Save yourselves." Arlo and I didn't need to be told twice. We scrambled out of the cabin, our hearts pounding, and made our way to the lifeboat. The sea was calm now, the storm a distant memory. We rowed for hours, the yacht growing smaller and smaller in the distance. Neither of us spoke, the weight of what we had witnessed pressing down on us like a suffocating blanket. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and questions. When we finally reached the shore, the sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the landscape. We stumbled onto the beach, exhausted and traumatized. For a moment, we just lay there, letting the reality of our survival sink in. Arlo was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are we going to do now?" I looked at him, my mind racing. The events of the past few days felt like a nightmare, too surreal to be true. But the pain and loss were real, and so were the ghosts that haunted us. "We need to tell someone," I said, my voice shaking. "We can't keep this to ourselves." Arlo nodded, but there was a distant look in his eyes. I knew he was thinking about his father, the sacrifice he had made to save us. The guilt and sorrow were etched into his face, and I wondered if he would ever be the same again. In the weeks that followed, we were questioned by the authorities. We told them what we could, but left out the supernatural elements. We knew they would never believe us. The official story was that the storm had caused the accidents, leading to the deaths of our friends and Arlo's father. But Arlo and I knew the truth. The yacht was cursed, haunted by the spirits of those it had claimed. The whispers and the apparitions were real, and they had left an indelible mark on our souls. Arlo withdrew into himself, spending long hours alone, staring out at the sea. He refused to talk about what had happened, and I could see the pain and guilt eating away at him. I tried to be there for him, but there was only so much I could do. As for me, I was plagued by nightmares. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the whispers echoing in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had escaped something far worse than death, and that it was still out there, waiting. One night, several months after our ordeal, I received a frantic call from Arlo. His voice was filled with panic and fear, and I could barely make out what he was saying. "They're back," he whispered. "The whispers, they're back." I rushed over to his apartment, my heart pounding. When I arrived, I found him in a state of utter terror. He was pale and shaking, his eyes wild with fear. "They won't leave me alone," he said, his voice trembling. "I can't take it anymore." I tried to calm him down, but it was no use. The whispers had returned, louder and more insistent than ever. I could hear them too, a haunting chorus that filled the room. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to find a way to end this." Arlo looked at me, desperation in his eyes. How? How do we stop this? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we couldn't keep running. We had to face whatever was haunting us and find a way to make it stop. We decided to return to the yacht, hoping to find some clue or way to end the curse. The journey back was filled with dread, the whispers growing louder with each passing mile. When we arrived, the yacht was just as we had left it, a ghostly silhouette against the dark water. We boarded cautiously, every creak and groan of the ship sending shivers down our spines. The whispers guided us below deck, to the cabin where it had all begun. There, we found a hidden compartment filled with old, dusty journals. They belonged to Arlo's father, detailing the history of the yacht and the curse that plagued it. We learned that the yacht had been built on cursed land, a place where many had died under mysterious circumstances. The spirits of those lost had latched onto the yacht, doomed to haunt it forever. The only way to break the curse was to perform a ritual, returning the yacht to the cursed land and offering a sacrifice. Arlo looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. "We have to do this. It's the only way to end it." I nodded, knowing he was right. We prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary items and making our way to the cursed land. As we performed the ritual, the whispers grew deafening, a cacophony of anger and sorrow. The air grew colder, and the spirits of our friends appeared, their faces twisted with pain and rage. "You brought us here," they chanted. "You must pay the price." Arlo stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "Take me," he said, his voice steady. "Let my sacrifice end this." The spirits hesitated, their forms flickering. Then, with a final, mournful wail, they converged on Arlo, their cold hands reaching out to claim him. "No," I shouted, trying to pull him back, but it was too late. The spirits surrounded him, their whispers filling the air. Arlo turned to me, a sad smile on his face. "It's okay," he said. "This is my choice." As the spirits dragged him away, the yacht began to shake, the air filled with a blinding light. I was thrown back, the force of the ritual knocking me unconscious. When I woke up, the yacht was gone, and I was lying on the shore of the cursed land. The air was still, the whispers finally silent. I knew that Arlo's sacrifice had ended the curse, but the cost was too great. I was alone, the last surviving member of our group. The pain and loss were overwhelming, but I knew I had to move on. Arlo had given his life to save me, and I couldn't let his sacrifice be in vain. As I walked away from the cursed land, I made a promise to myself. I would live my life to the fullest, in honor of those we had lost, and I would never forget the lessons I had learned about the dangers that lurked just beyond the veil of our reality. They've found me. They're pounding on the door. It won't hold for much longer. I'm trapped. There's no escape. Please accept this post as my dying declaration. More importantly, let it be a warning to you, to all of you, because the fate of the entire human race could rest upon what I'm about to tell you. Before I go any further, I beg you, do not dismiss what I'm about to reveal as a prank or hoax. It's so unbelievable I can scarcely believe it myself. If I were not living this nightmare in real time, I would have laughed at how far-fetched it all sounds. I was living my best life. Not easy, given I'm a wheelchair-bound teenage girl living on a rundown ranch in the middle of nowhere, but I was determined to make the most of it. I was a straight-A student and captain of the girls' softball team. Sure, I needed someone to be my legs, but boy could I swing that bat. I had a happy upbringing thanks to my elderly foster parents, Jack and Ruth, who raised me since I was a toddler. The way they tell it, my mom had eventually succumbed to her opioid addiction on the couch in our ramshackle home in Lincoln County. She had been there for several days, leaving me upstairs all alone. I had somehow managed to scramble out of my crib, desperately looking for food, despite only being 18 months old. Weak from hunger, my legs gave way, and I tumbled down the stairs. I may have lost the use of my legs that day, but I gained the most loving foster parents you could ever wish for. They doted on me. They made sure I never went hungry ever again. I often teased them, calling them feeders, and I guess they saw the funny side because they always responded by saying, "Eat up at mealtime." The joke was wearing thin. My 16th birthday was rapidly approaching, and I was concerned about how much weight I had gained. There was a boy in class that I liked, and I wanted to look my best. But when I shared my concerns with my foster mom, she told me I was being silly, and if anything, I had lost weight. When I complained that my clothes were starting to feel too tight, she smiled and said, "You're turning from a girl into a woman. They're bound to feel tight." I nodded. It made sense. A few days before my birthday, I saw her gift wrapping a beautiful dress. It was red with lots of frills and sequins. I was so excited I could hardly wait to try it on. Later that day, I saw the same dress sticking out of the trash. I was devastated and wondered what I had done wrong. I had done my chores. I had eaten my dinner, every last morsel as they had demanded. It made no sense. I gazed longingly at my birthday dress as it drowned in a sea of trash. I wanted so much to rescue it from its terrible fate. Eventually, I reached for it. The silk felt so soft against my delicate skin. As I held it against me, the label landed on my lap. It looked like it had been removed with a pair of scissors. I glanced at it and immediately noticed that the dress was at least 2 sizes smaller than the label suggested. That's why they threw it away. It was way too small, I told myself. I would not have thought any more of it had I not seen my gift exactly where my foster mom had left it earlier that morning. It was untouched. I sensed something was off. I grabbed my birthday present and tore at the wrapping. Inside was an identical dress, except this one was my size and sure to fit. I beamed like a Cheshire cat. My crush was bound to notice me in it. For a moment, it was probably the happiest I had been in my entire life. But then my eyes zoomed in on the label. It was the wrong size. I knew instantly that my foster mom had switched the labels. She wanted me to think I was much slimmer than I am. It was like a kick in the teeth. I suspected that I had gained a lot of weight, and here was the evidence to prove it. Furious, I spun my wheelchair around and headed towards the living room to confront her. As I approached, I could hear what sounded like conspiratory whispers. I peered through a crack in the door and saw my foster mom utter, "I hope she tastes as good as she looks." My foster dad looked predatory as he licked his lips and whispered, "Sweet 16. They started to cackle like a pair of hyenas on the hunt. Their disturbing chuckles rang in my ears as I charged into the bathroom in my wheelchair. I barely had my head in the toilet before the contents of my stomach erupted like Mount Vesuvius. My heart pounded as I wiped my mouth clean. The two people I loved most in the world had been fattening me up like a plump Thanksgiving turkey so they could devour me. I couldn't believe it. I had to know more about these monsters whom I had spent most of my life calling Mom and Dad. I rifled through the cupboard drawers looking for something, anything. I pulled out several bills and invoices, but nothing incriminating. I paused for a moment. Think, Cassie, think. My mind raced. I suddenly muttered, the tool shed. My foster dad spent an ungodly amount of time there. Yet, he never seemed to make anything or fix anything. The wheels on my wheelchair spun like Boudica's war chariot as I charged outside. I checked to ensure the coast was clear and entered the shabby structure. A strange humming sound greeted me. Distracted by the weird noise, my wheelchair brushed against a workbench. The impact caused a bottle of weed killer to topple over. I caught it mid-air and put it back, next to a small blood-stained axe. I felt sure it was human blood, but I couldn't get that damn noise out of my head. It was coming from behind a dusty old curtain that looked like it had been a food source for moths since the dawn of civilization. I yanked the curtain hard. A cloud of dust enveloped me. I coughed and spluttered as I frantically rubbed my eyes, desperate to see what it was concealing. I was confronted with an imposing, solid oak door reinforced with thick strips of wrought iron. The incessant humming sound grew ever louder. I turned the handle, expecting the door to be locked. To my surprise, the door slowly creaked open. I gasped as my vision fell upon an array of state-of-the-art computers and servers that looked like they belonged in NASA's headquarters, not my foster dad's tool shed. I was desperate to discover what secrets the high-tech equipment was holding, but knew I needed something to protect me in case I was disturbed. I promptly grabbed the axe and weed killer off the workbench and placed them on my lap. My fingers caressed the keyboard as I attempted to gain access to the password-protected information concealed within the hard drive of one of the many computers. I wondered what dark secrets they were hiding as I typed variations of all the passwords I could think of. Just as I was on the verge of giving up, I noticed a small trunk tucked in the corner beneath a workstation. It was covered in cobwebs and had a rusted padlock. I wasted no time in breaking it open with the axe. Inside was an old driver's license with my foster dad's name on it, dated 1947. Lying next to it was a framed, black and white picture of my foster parents. They looked the same now as they did back then. How was that possible, I wondered? Almost 80 years had passed, but they had not aged a day. At the bottom of the trunk, there was an old scrapbook. I quickly thumbed through it. There were several newspaper clippings of the Roswell incident. Not too surprising, I reasoned. After all, it was practically on our doorstep and was big news back then. I continued to flick through it. To my horror, there were several Polaroids of teenage girls spanning decades, each blowing out the candles on a birthday cake as my foster parents looked on admiringly. All the girls looked like they were carrying a few too many extra pounds, much like me. Moreover, each cake had 2 numbered candles. The first one was the number 1. The second was the number 6. My brain instantly generated a myriad of questions. Who are these girls? Where are they now? Why are there no photos of them celebrating any other birthday besides their 16th? I feared the worst. Am I next? I wondered. I gazed at their innocent, smiling faces as they blew out the candles on a cake they probably never even got to taste. I focused on the candles. An idea suddenly jumped out at me. I hastened over to the same computer as before and hurriedly typed in the number 16. It failed. I tried 16. Access was denied yet again. I turned away from the computer screen, defeated. I was on the verge of giving up when I decided on one final try. I typed in the words, Sweet 16. The screen suddenly loaded. I was in. I couldn't help myself and whispered, Sick son of a bitch because of my foster dad's twisted cannibalistic desires. I studied the monitor as an array of text appeared on the screen. There were no actual words. Rather, it was a huge sequence of similar numbers such as 0111 and 0111. Fortunately, math was my strongest subject. I didn't particularly like it, but I understood it. I instantly recognized the numbers as binary code and set about deciphering it as best I could. Just as I believed things could not get any worse, The seriousness of the situation escalated to catastrophic levels. I began to decipher words such as planet, attack, destroy, and colonization. My heart raced as I started to make sense of the numerical text. It quickly became apparent that Jack and Ruth were aliens from an unknown planet whose inhabitants were preparing to attack us. My so-called foster parents were seemingly on a scouting expedition when they crash-landed near Roswell in 1947. They had probably murdered Jack and Ruth and stolen their identities and all their possessions, including their ranch. Hiding in plain sight, they had been reporting back to their home planet ever since. As I continued deciphering the code, I noticed the text was becoming increasingly dark. There was mention of sustainable farming, accompanied by drawings of dozens of young girls in individual cages. They were all shackled with feeder tubes inserted in their mouths. Breeding farms were also discussed. The best male livestock would be used to produce a continuous food supply. Tears filled my eyes when I saw their plans for the rest of the population. Virtually every male, man or boy, is to be put to death, their bodies to be used as a source of heat. A similar fate awaited the sick and the elderly. The only human survivors in this terrible new world would be girls aged 0 to 16, with a life expectancy of 16 years. Once they reached this milestone, they were to be slaughtered and eaten. My stomach churned as I discovered why 16-year-old girls were so prized by this alien race. It was apparent that my foster parents had documented their culinary exploits in great detail. They had sampled human flesh from all ages and sexes, newborn to elderly. Their comments were grotesque and way too graphic. Phrases such as too fatty, too tough, and too grisly were common. It was suggested that the raging hormones in pubescent girls is the reason the meat tastes so sweet and flavoursome, with 16 being the optimum age to slaughter the livestock. My body shook head to toe as I tried to process these shocking revelations. I knew that I had to try and stop them somehow. My mind raced as I tried to devise a plan of action. I thought about returning to the house to get my cell phone so that I could call the cops. I had left it on charge, but was sure it would have enough battery to make multiple calls by now. I decided it was too risky and opted to put everything I had discovered in a folder and email a copy to the relevant authorities. I set about creating a folder. My fingers frantically pounded the keyboard. I was almost done when I heard footsteps. I eyed the weed killer and knew what I had to do. I reasoned that maybe I could take them with me as I quickly unscrewed the cap. I discarded the empty bottle of weed killer just as my foster parents started pounding on the door, demanding that I let them in. I gripped the axe tight as the door suddenly exploded into a pile of kindling. My heart pounded like a drum. I realized that Jack and Rose had morphed into their true selves. No way could two elderly folk have destroyed the door with such force. I was expecting slimy, green creatures with tentacles. However, they are far more hideous and threatening. They have both transformed into a huge black mass, which is more animalistic than human. It was like staring at a pair of silhouettes. Yet, they exude power and have multiple limbs with claws the size of daggers. Their mouths are huge, with row upon row of razor-sharp, triangular-shaped teeth with a vicious, serrated edge. They are like no apex predator I have ever seen. It is like looking at the shadows of two giant, multi-limbed grizzly bears with the jaws of a great white, capable of enormous ferocity and damage. I'm beginning to feel incredibly nauseous. I'm not sure if it is sheer terror or the weed killer starting to take effect. Either way, I'm determined to keep the contents of my stomach intact in the hope that they get a nasty little surprise when they devour me. I take great comfort in knowing I will taste anything but sweet. Hopefully, I won't be the only one who breathes their last today. They're still 20 feet away, but are edging closer towards me. Drool drips from their huge, shark-like teeth as they salivate in anticipation of their feast. They're almost within touching distance now. I can feel their hot breath on my soft skin as I frantically finish typing up this post with my left hand. My right hand grips the axe tight. I may be disabled, but I'm going out swinging. I pray you heed my warning and notify the authorities immediately. They're inches away. I've just enough time to click submit. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If you dare to explore further, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling tales of horror and the supernatural. Remember, the shadows hold endless mysteries, waiting to be unveiled. Stay tuned for more bone-chilling stories as we continue to traverse the eerie depths of the unknown together. Until next time, may your dreams be free from the haunting echoes of our tales. Or perhaps not.